Hi, my name is Darren Bartlett, and I love discussing African affairs. Now, starting this weekend, which is the 5th of July, I'm going to be sharing the news that I think caught my attention throughout the week, which I'll call the Saturday Roundup here with Darren Bartlett. So all you have to do is subscribe on my YouTube channel, which is Darren Bartlett 256. When you look for that, you're going to find me, subscribe, and then you get to follow the news. Now, I'm going to start up with a political story, and this is to do with elections. I've been sharing this information from Monday, the things to do with elections, but let me start with Cameroon, because a second ally of Paul Biya, one of the longest serving presidents on the African continent, has joined the race. He actually went and picked forms from the National Union for Democracy and Progress, where he said he actually expressed his interest there, and he was given an endorsement to go and run for presidency, and the party is willing to support him behind that cause. I don't know many people who have the energy to go against an incumbent who has been there for a very long time. Imagine a man who has ruled the country since 1982, and you really think that you can go and pick him to eat. You never know. Maybe Cameroonians attack. But how close was he? By the way, if we are to talk about, for those who don't know the gentleman I'm talking about, his name is Maigari, and he's 78 years of age, and he's been a former prime minister of Cameroon, a very close ally for over 30 years. They've been friends. So that closeness alone tells you how much he probably knows the tricks that Paul Biya uses to stay in power. But here's the problem. In Uganda, there's a president called Yoweri Museveni. He's the president of Uganda, I must say so. He had a good ally. He was with during this trouble when he came to power, when he captured power in Uganda. His name is called Amama Mbabazi. He was also a former prime minister for Uganda. And when they fell out bitterly, of course, he had expressed interest to run for president. And guess what? They fell out so bitterly. And that's the last time we ever had Prime Minister Mama Mbabazi being so vocal in public, because that bid for him to become a president failed. He came actually third in the race, and it was tough. Their friendship was tested. The first time I've ever seen an ally being arrested, like Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, Amama Mbabazi, was such a strong person, if you ask me. Very diplomatic, very eloquent, very powerful. A Prime Minister who demands that the other ministers welcome him from an international trip. It's not an easy one. So I see Maigara having a challenge getting against Paul Biya. Maybe the Cameroonians think that this will be the chance for them to have new blood and fresh rule when it comes to Cameroon. But all the best when it comes to Paul Biya being defeated in an election. But that election, I think, is also happening in October. So we have a lot of things to watch out in October. There is Cameroon, and there's also Tanzania. There's also Malawi, which is actually in September very soon. So elections all over the place. We will see what will happen in Cameroon. Now, still speaking elections, I am going to speak about Uganda. Now, many people ask me why I don't talk about Uganda most of the times, because this is where I live. And because this is where I live, I thought in the beginning that my audience already knows, which was Uganda largely, which I thought they already know what is going on. So I was doing for them the African news from the other places of the country. But yeah, well, I'm told I have to do it. So fine, cool. Let's talk about it. Now, Uganda is also going through an election cycle, and they'll be voting for the next president, or a new president, or even the president who is the incumbent may stay in power in January next year, 2026. But the process started today, and not today, it has actually been ongoing. But what is happening today is that the incumbent, the current chairperson of the NRM, President Museveni, is going to pick his nomination forms, expressing his interests to remain as the party chairman #1, but also to run for president come 2026. This is going to be the 7th time he will be in the race. And I can count you all of these times. He was there in 1996, he came in 2001, he came in 2006, he came in 2011, he came in 2016, he came in 2021, and now he's going to be doing 2026 if he stays alive, or if he's alive. That is God's plan. But who are the people who want to run against him? I see the same faces. I see Bobby Wine, who's also known as Chabulani. I see the former leader of opposition, Mathias Mpunga, who left the camp of Bobby Wine. They were very much allies, but well, they fell out from the party, and now he's on his own. He has his own party. I see him running for that. I don't see FDC bringing a candidate, but I see Democratic Party bringing Norbert Mao back into the race. So there might be so many candidates, but who has the upper hand? I would say that President Yoweri Museveni, who is on today, who's the incumbent, has an upper hand in winning the election. So that's one that you will want to watch. But I think for me, the most interesting bit about the election in Uganda is going to be the parliamentary election. It's more exciting because I know the president will definitely win. He will win. That's my prediction. It's not it's not what I said, but it's my prediction, given the strength that he has on the ground. But for parliamentary seats, that is going to be tricky because every single election cycle, people tend to cross from one party to another. They are looking for who has more energy and excitement for the youth. That's where they go. So it's tricky one, but let's see what is going to happen by that time. Now let's talk about some press freedoms, and this is from our friends in Zimbabwe. You all know that this week, a one called Faith Zaba, who works with the Zimbabwe Independent paper or news agency, was arrested for a satirical column that she had wrote. And I was going through it, and you can see some of the words that are being chosen there on your screen there. But it was Muckraker, something like that. I think Muckraker. Those are the words that were used there. But here's the thing: she talks about Zimbabwe's interference in Mozambique elections, where I say that they were really into the elections, and they made sure that Chapo won the elections in Mozambique. In fact, they just celebrated their 50th independence here, where they were invited. They invited about 32 presidents who said they had confirmed that. Unfortunately, they didn't, according to that article that Faith had written. Because she's the editor, she's the editor in chief of the paper, and she had her piece run there, which got her into trouble. So she makes some allegations. She says that Zimbabwe interfered with the elections of Mozambique. Zimbabwe interfered with the elections in Namibia. Zimbabwe interfered with the elections in Botswana. And she says that the 1 year chairmanship of SADC, because this goes around, it's always in rotation, brought nothing to the people of Zimbabwe. In fact, it was a waste of time. And I think this got the people in power a little bit knocked, because they believe that she incited or abused the person of the president. I like that law. Even here in Uganda, by the way, it's there. You make a mistake of saying things that don't make sense against the president. The president is protected in the law, and his people and his family are protected by the law. So I think the same happens in Zimbabwe, and that article got her into problems. She even criticizes what they call the Patriotic Act, which goes ahead to punish citizens who are found guilty with that law, saying that you can actually be removed your citizenship. And I asked myself, wait, so if I did something that is very unpatriotic in the country like Zimbabwe, and you nullify or revoke my citizenship, where do I go? Which other country do I go to? Because if I'm Zimbabwean, then where do I go? So they talk about that so much. And my only concern is that you cannot be guaranteed with freedoms of the press in Africa. That is alien to so many years. In fact, a report that was released this January in 2025, 16th January actually, it showed that 67 journalists have been arrested in Africa alone. Africa alone. So there's a one called Sandra from Burundi was arrested. In Nigeria, I think 4 are behind bars. In Ethiopia, 5 are behind bars. Now, Faith herself is behind bars. There's a French journalist in Algeria. I think it's called Christophe. was also arrested. He's serving his sentence behind bars. Egypt is another one country where people are always arrested. Tanzania, you just never know. But the freedom of press is just, it's just not, there's a whole human rights report with Amnesty Tanzania that brought that report and said that journalists are stopped from speaking or expressing themselves. That's what they say. These are reports that are everywhere you can read about. So Faith, I cannot guarantee you that you really can have a freedom to speak the words that you used. When I went through that article, yeah, tough. It's very tough. Muckraker, yeah, tough time. Tough time. So satire is difficult. It's only very few presidents that can take in satire. But and I'll give an example. A Ugandan president here can take in satire. He can, if it's satire. You see, the intention for going online and writing an article, if you're directly abusing him, this is how you look like. These are like one Stella Nyazi, Ugandan, now a refugee in German, seeking asylum there. She got herself into trouble by calling, of course, she wrote poems that are very disturbing. Some of the words that I can't even speak on air, but called them organs of the body. And she was arrested, taken to court, and when she was released, she ran away, and that's how she ended up in Germany, because she can't stay here. So there are people who make satire out of the president, get away with it. But if you directly abuse the president, if it's just an article, likely you may talk. But abusing him directly, I've seen TikTokers get themselves in jail because of that. So you better be very careful when you're dealing with the press here in Africa. But Africa is not the worst, because there are 371 journalists arrested worldwide for the work they do, especially if they are exposing, or when sometimes they're, I don't know, they're given, either they are in the line of duty where they are arrested, or they are exposing. There's an investigative piece, like the journalist, I think, who was killed in Kenya. He had actually run to Kenya for refuge, and then he was shot in Kenya, flew him back his body, and there was a whole diplomatic row between Kenya and where he came from. So, yeah, you can't be guaranteed of safety as a journalist. So expressing yourself is limited when you come here on the African continent. Very tough time. So that one, I really don't know if it was going to be an easy walk away. See how many bloggers every day they say they're disappearing in Kenya. So that's a tough one. But also, maybe another last story that caught my attention, and I was still reading it 30 years ago. It was brought to light by the Nation Daily, the paper. In Kenya, the press is very aggressive. Every day you read a headline that is so mind-blowing. But this is the one that caught my attention, is that President Ruto is actually building a church in State House. Yep. You had me. And this church is going to cost 1.2 billion shillings. Kenyan shillings, by the way. Okay, just so you know it. And so yesterday he came out and he accepted, he acknowledged and said, yes, I am going to build a church in State House, and I'm going to use my money. So this is not government money at all. He says it's his money, so people shouldn't even worry about. And he says that for him to build a church is because he's a Christian. He loves God. And that already there was a church that existed in State House of Kenya. The problem was that church was built with iron sheets. So it was not reflective of the address of the president. It wasn't making sense. So he decided, I'm going to build a church there. My concern, whereas people have valid concerns. They say maybe he could do the same and build more hospitals and, put up jobs and all these other things that basically to improve the economical and social life of people using that very money that he has, that is personal, because when he builds a church in State House, it's going to become a structure of State House. It's going to be a property of State House, because anything built on land in terms of a fixture now belongs to the land, which the land does not belong to him. So that is one thing that is clear. But my concern is that what if Kenya has a Muslim president, a Buddhist president, an Adventist president? What happened? So should a Muslim president come and also build a mosque in Kenya, in State House? Yeah. those are the stories that I think caught my attention. Others are so many. I can just mention a few of them. The constitutional draft in Guinea is one of them that is interesting to also follow, since they also plan to have an election by the end of the year, if all plan goes well. But they will have a referendum, I think, in September. The dam that has been built by Ethiopia, congratulations, that was quite interesting. But we want to see how the relationships are going to develop between Egypt and Sudan. And also in Somalia, the UPDF's helicopter crashed. Some went missing, others died. So it's one of those that also caught my attention, I must say. And also Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, coming out to say that the narrative that is being pushed around, that every time an international paper or a newspaper is writing about the situation in Congo, they like to say Rwandan-backed M23. But when it's the other side, they don't say the FDLR-backed rebels who are destabilizing or who are a scare or to Rwanda, and also, by the way, happy independence to Rwanda. So that should also be known to them. But also the deal that was signed between Rwanda and Congo in the USA, that should not even happen. That neocolonialism that is going to happen there. How did Congo give its minerals, access to its minerals, to USA? For what? For peace that we could have resolved on the African continent? I will see you in the next roundup next Saturday. My name is Darren. Subscribe. Let's enjoy the stories that are on the continent.